Okay. I'd like to call this July 1st, 2020 meeting of the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission to order. First item on the agenda is roll call and determination of a quorum.
All right, Danielle Henderson,
Sorry, I was muted. Present.
Michael Widmer,
Present.
Bill Hauk,
Here.
Michael Drinkwater,
Here.
John Enlow,
Here.
John Flansburgh, Mickey Hazelwood,
Here.
John Martini, John Combs, Dave Solero, Mervyn Wright,
Here.
John Zimmerman.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment, limited to 3 minutes per person. I don't know how to tell if there's any comment out there.
We have none.
Okay. Moving on, next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Enlow. Second. Drinkwater.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, agenda item 5, presentation of the draft 2020 Washoe County Consensus Forecast and the comparison of the consensus population forecast for 2040 with the sustainable water resources set forth in the Regional Water Management Plan. Jeremy Smith and Jim Smitherman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll kick this one off really quickly and call Jeremy to come forward and share his screen. He's going to lead off with a presentation of the 2020 Washoe County Consensus Forecast. And then I'll follow that up with a brief presentation on the comparison with the water resources. So Jeremy, are you here and can you share your screen?
There he is.
Welcome.
Yep, I'm in here now, and I'll share the screen right now.
Excellent.
Okay, are you guys seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, my name is Jeremy Smith. I'm the interim director at Truckee Regional Planning Agency. It's good to see you guys. Today I want to talk to you about the 2020 consensus forecast. I've brought this kind of information forward a few times to you before. Every 2 years we do this, and we bring forward the projection to make sure that we have the identified sustainable water resource to support it. What is it? It's a consensus forecast, and so that primarily means that it's a forecast of, or it's an averaging of multiple sources. And the reason to do that is to remove bias of any one particular source. So we use 4 sources. I'll show those in a sec. And the second kind of definition of consensus that I like to apply is that it helps align the community outlook of what we can expect in terms of population and employment in the future. Per our regional plan, local jurisdictions and affected entities are required to use this information as a primary source of planning for the future. And it's a context then for long-range planning. So here are the 4 sources. We do this every 2 years, as I mentioned, and in fact, we'll probably be using 3 of the sources, the 2 local and the inexpensive source, to update our annual report every year. But every 2 years, we will get out there and still acquire the Global Insight, or IHS market data it's called now, which has kind of a hefty price tag. But these are the 4 sources. The Nevada State Demographer, Jeff Hardcastle, Sean Stoddard over at Tumwa does a statistical model, and then we buy Woods and Pool and IHS Market. And here's what they look like. Each line relates to one of those forecast sources, and the red dashed line represents the average of the 4. And so unsurprisingly, the blue line is Woods and Pool. That's typically always a straight line kind of shooting off into the stratosphere. And then the other lines tend to be a little more nuanced. You can see that both the demographer line and the Tumwa line, which is sort of the lighter of the 2 black looking lines above there, kind of have a bit of a an easing off as they go through time. So kind of a rapid beginning and then a leveling off in the projection. So if we look at the right side of the slide, you can see that in 2019, actually, which is the last, July 1 of 2019 is the last moment we have a governor's certified estimate of population. That came in at 469,000 and change in Washoe County. So our 2020 forecast, based on these averaging, for hopefully we'll see the July 1 forecast for 2020 be around 477,000. And that would mean that we're tracking pretty well with what the state demographer is actually seeing. When you take this 20-year forecast, which out to 2040 predicts about 570,000 people, 569,385 people in Washoe County, if you just subtract the existing governor's certified estimate, that's a growth increment of almost 100,000 people, 99,584 new residents in Washoe County. This one I enjoy this graph because it's sort of like shows the power of collecting data over time. This is all of the consensus forecasts that we've done since 2003, cast out in time with that thick black line showing us the actual certified estimates. And so you can see, if you go to the thin line that's down here, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but that's the 2003 estimate. And if you look at that thick black line, we're pretty darn close to what that glide path in 2003 was identified as. And you can sort of see that when we were really booming in the mid 2000s, the forecasts got a little bit optimistic and they're kind of really shooting off into the sky there. But lately, you can see the red dashed line, really everything has been tracking pretty similarly. So no surprises. We're kind of moving forward in an expected way. Here we have an age cohort, go back. Age cohort breakdown of the population. So in 2020, that's the graph on the left. You can see a bit of a swell towards the bottom of the graph on the right, which is 2040. And that is basically indicative of a bit of a couple percent increase in our senior population. You can see that in the table below, where retired ages jump from 18% to 21%, and working ages drop from 58 to 55. Okay, also a part of the consensus forecast is looking at future job growth. This one can get a little tricky, but we only have the two sources to pull from here in terms of future forecast of jobs, the two national sources, IHS Markit and Woods and Pool. And what's interesting is that when you get into the job world, there's several different ways that jobs are reported. And one major distinction is covered employment, so those employees that are covered by employment insurance, and then those that are not, people like realtors or sole proprietors, self-owned businesses. So that factor, that difference between covered employment and total employment can be upwards of 35% change. And since we are doing this forecast to inform planning, and think about transportation planning or water use planning, we're not just going to want to know about the covered jobs, we're going to want to know about really all the jobs. And so we do an analysis looking at historic data from both the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. BEA, or Bureau of Economic Analysis, tracks total jobs, and the BLS tracks covered jobs. And so we can use those past relationships to help us understand how to factor up this IHS Markit data to be a total jobs. And that's what we've done. It's gone from the yellow line to the green line, and we average those and we get the red line forecast for jobs. It ends up being about an addition of 67,000 jobs over 20 years. I think when we think about the fact that we're living in a COVID world now and the massive skyrocketing unemployment rates that we've seen, this part of the forecast is going to bear some scrutiny as we move forward and see how that goes. So for now, we have used the historic methodology, but we're watching to see just what goes down in that job forum, if you will. Here's the income forecast. Typically, the two national forecast houses provide this as well. And so you can see about almost a $20,000 and $2012 increase in per capita income for residents in Washoe County. Pretty typical to previous forecasts. Finally, we're doing a lot of this work to support that long-range planning, and one of the big projects is the Regional Transportation Plan. And in fact, that project is going to be looking out to 2050. Our forecast is a 20-year forecast, but we need to provide data spatially disaggregated data, so predictions on the ground of where these people will locate and where the jobs will happen out to 2050. So to do that, we have to extrapolate some of these projection data, both the state demographer and the global or IHS market data needed to be extrapolated. And so we just fit a curve to the existing line, and you can see here we forecast out to the year 2050. That's how we get there. So we have all this data, and the next step that we're in process with right now is the thing we call the spatial disaggregation. And again, that's how we really convert the population growth into dwelling units, and we find out where we think those dwelling units are going to locate. And we work with the jurisdictions on that to make sure that we're getting the information from them about what they know is coming down the pike, because sometimes things are off of our radar. But we also track the planned unit developments and tentative maps and anything that comes through regional. So we have a pretty good idea of what's entitled out there, and we use that to help figure out where we think these jobs and homes are going to locate. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smitherman, anything further on this agenda item?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. I'm going to share with you the comparison with the water resources now then. So I've got to go to share my screen. There it is. Okay, it's up on my screen. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Starting off with a little bit of background, now it looks like I've advanced too far down the presentation. There we go. Just to start off with a little bit of background, we do this water resources comparison with the consensus forecast every 2 years because of 2008 Washoe County ballot question. It was an advisory question that was asked, and the voters voted, I think something like 70% of the voters said yes to the question, should the regional plan be in balance with sustainable water resources in Washoe County? So that led to 2010 regional plan amendments sponsored by Washoe County, since that's whose advisory question was on the ballot. And those amendments included a method, I guess, to ensure that the balance is maintained. And that would be to compare the draft consensus forecast with the estimated population that can be supported by the sustainable water resources identified in the regional water plan. Though that procedure is now preserved in the Regional Planning Governing Board's regulations on procedure. So that's how this whole comparison thing started. And so moving on to the first question or the first slide, the first part of the comparison is to come up with the consensus forecast population for 20 years out, which Jeremy just shared with you. So then on to the second part is we look at the estimated sustainable water resources in the regional water plan. The adopted plan identifies 190,500 acre feet from sources including the Troy yield from the Truckee River system, and then groundwater basins that are either currently have municipal industrial development in them, or they could potentially be within reach of a water project. So you can see the map, it highlights groundwater basins in the south from Washoe Valley all the way up to the north to Smoke Creek Desert, excuse me. And as I said, not all of those basins have municipal industrial development in them. About 6 years ago, it was on the heels of recovering from the Great Recession. Staff was asked to reevaluate the water resources estimate in the regional water plan. And so what Chris and I did was looked at the same surface water system, Truckee River system, Troy yield of 119,000 acre feet per year, and then looked at only the groundwater basins that have municipal industrial development that we're relying on right now. And that includes the Fish Springs project in the Honey Lake Valley, which is the one outlying basin to the north. We came up with 143,800 acre feet. So that would be potentially available with conversion of existing water rights that are not in municipal industrial use now, with no additional water importation projects. So the next step is to come up with some kind of a water use projection for the 2040 population. And looking at the difference between the 20-year population forecast 2 years ago in 2018 and the current population forecast that Jeremy just shared with us, there's about a 2% increase in that number from projected 2038 population to 2040 population. So what I did is looked at the water use projection that was provided by TUMWA 2 years ago and increased that by 2%. And I came up with 114,000 acre feet. So, and that is a reasonable estimate of what that 569,000 people might use based on the water use coefficients that TUMWA currently uses. And then that brings us to the conclusions that since 114,000 acre feet to serve a population of 569,000 is considerably less water than 143,800 acre feet per year. The conclusion can be reached easily that the sustainable water resources identified in the Regional Water Management Plan are more than enough to serve the 2020 consensus forecast, the 20-year population. Now, that was the basis for my recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission. Typically, this would come to you for a recommendation first, but since we had technical difficulties and were unable to convene a meeting last month, I took the recommendation directly to the Western Regional Water Commission, which they approved unanimously. So, and just for those of you who might be wondering the question, what is the population that 143,800 acre feet could serve in the future? That came out to about population of about 720,000, assuming similar water use patterns as today. And so with that, I would conclude my presentation and turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, if you have any questions or comments for the commission. This is, we queued this one up as a non-action item since the action had already been taken by the Western Regional Water Commission last month.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Smitherman. Are there any comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is Mervyn. That 143,800 acre feet per year. So where did that number come from, and what is the support information behind that number?
What I have to support that is the water use estimate that was provided by Sean Stoddard at TUMWA 2 years ago. And what he did was looked at customer base for TUMWA, both the commercial and industrial population or demands and the residential demands. He spread that out over the whole county, and then I believe we subtracted Incline Village from a county-wide water use and just focused on the population that's in our planning area. So that excludes, as you know, the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe Reservation and also the Tahoe Basin, and then based that on what the water use is using current water usage factors. I could supply that to you if you'd like to see the analysis.
Yeah, I think one day I'll give you a call and we can talk some more about this. But I guess it's really based on it's really a demand. Is that what that number is based on? Is the demand?
Yeah, it's right. It's based on existing customer demand of TUMWA. Mm-hmm. And then we also layered in how many domestic wells we would expect in the region at that time. And I think we assigned them 2 acre feet per year, since that's what their duty is according to the state water law. And made sure that we covered all of the commercial industrial use in the demand factors.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that's a fair, approach to this number you've arrived, the way you've arrived at it. But there's another part of it, which is the supply. And so, I think when we look at, this projection of water use, 20 years out, I think as we proceed through it, we're going to also have to complement it with the supply. So, but thank you for your explanation and explaining that to me.
Okay. Commissioner Wright, I'll say just a couple of words about what we did on the supply side. And that was, we looked at, like I said, the TROA yield, which is 119,000 acre feet by the agreement. And then we looked at all of the groundwater basins and looked at all of the rights that existed in those groundwater basins that either were in municipal use or could be converted to municipal use. And we eliminated all of the uses that could not be converted to municipal industrial use. And that was how we came up with it's a fairly large number, but it's based in the state engineer's water rights system.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you both for the presentation. The next item on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I do believe we might have skipped item 4. I don't know that we approved the minutes. I was just contemplating that. I'm trying to remember who. I know we approved the agenda, but we may need to go back and approve the minutes for May 6th.
Yeah, Mr.
Let's
Chair, I
do
was gonna
that.
make the same suggestion.
Let's do that. So agenda item 4, approval of the minutes from the May 6, 2020 meeting. Are there any comments or questions from the commission on this? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve in a second.
Move to approve.
I'll second. Whitmer, second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martini and a second by Mr. Widmer. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 6, report on phase 1 of the Regional Stormwater Drainage Network Geographic Information System Project. Full direction to staff, Mr. Smith and Mr. Smitherman.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll go ahead and kick this one off just with a little bit of context before I hand it over to Jeremy. In 2017, the Western Regional Water Commission asked staff to work with the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency to bring back a proposal for the development of a regional stormwater infrastructure GIS map. TMRPA proposed and a phased approach, and the Western Regional Water Commission approved funding for them to conduct phase 1. The scope of that phase 1 is outlined in your staff report if you want to look at that. Jeremy reported the results of phase 1 in 2018. And then we really didn't hear a whole lot about that after that time until just a couple of months ago. The Western Regional Water Commission chairman expressed an interest in talking with Jeremy about additional stormwater GIS work. So for that reason, we're bringing this item to you. Jeremy will bring you up to speed on what his report was to the Western Regional Water Commission a couple of years ago. And then we would just ask for any input or recommendations you might have before we give the same report back to the Western Regional Water Commission. Thanks, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy now.
Thank you. I'll share my screen again. Theoretically. We're not there yet. Okay, hi, once again, Jeremy Smith for the record, Interim Director at TMRPA. And thanks for that intro, Jim. That's exactly how it went down. We were asked to take a look at stormwater infrastructure from a GIS perspective. So just important to think as we look at this that we're not talking about actual infrastructure on the ground per se. We didn't, we're looking at the GIS representation of that infrastructure. So that's like a first step, so that we kind of make sure that we have an active or an accurate inventory of what's on the ground. So that was the phase 1, was to kind of data gather and assess where we're at. we targeted these 9 hydro basins, which pretty much relate to the developed area around the Truckee Meadows, and we did not go up into the Tahoe Basin at all. Obviously focused then, yeah, on the metro area. It definitely includes areas like the closed basins to the north outside of the Truckee River drainage. We gathered data from all the jurisdictions on stormwater infrastructure, so things like, I guess, manholes and stormwater conveyance pipes, culvert, that sort of thing. And we basically broke it down to kind of a two-phased analysis to see what was out there. The first was to get it on a map, turn on imagery. We created this analysis grid. And then we had an intern, Tyler Smith, who was a student of mine in geography back years ago. We hired him in, and he went through and visually looked at every single one of these, I believe that might be quarter-mile squares, just to get a feel for, okay, what is actually there? And you can see we've turned on points for dwelling units. We've turned on points for roads. Those are in orange. And then in pink is the stormwater data we received from the jurisdictions. And we just were basically doing a sanity check visually to see, okay, where do we have a lot of homes? Where do we have a lot of buildings? And where do we have the stormwater infrastructure points in our GIS layers? And we had a 3-tiered system that we looked at visually. So blue, or number 1, would mean that it seems commensurate, like there's a decent amount of stormwater features in the square relative to what you see on the aerial and what you see in the data in terms of the developed environment. A yellow square means that maybe it's a little gappy. We would expect to see more stormwater features to serve those homes or buildings. And then finally, a gray square, or that one appears to have no color, like those in the north part of the smaller image. Those are areas where there were no stormwater features captured in any GIS data set, but there's clearly development. And so that may or may not be a problem, but it's just the way that we had the tools to go about first trying to assess where we may have gaps in our accounting of stormwater infrastructure. So that was the visual assessment. But then we went through and decided we would also do a quantitative assessment across a few dimensions to test that relationship a little further. So the relationship between a developed area and how much stormwater infrastructure we're tracking in a GIS sense. So we looked at these several relationships. So all of the stormwater line features we compared to building square footages per the assessor, road density, and housing and business point density. Business points relate to, it's not one-for-one for buildings per se, but certainly one-for-one with business establishments. So then we further looked at all of the stormwater point features. These would be, I guess, like manholes or box culvert locations or whatever it happens to be, and compared those analytically to, again, building square footage, road density, and the housing and business point density. And so if you want, we can go back one, take a look at that map on the right, and then that each square relates to the fact that it's visible because there's something developed in that square. This is the quantitative assessment, which is kind of a range from good, which is dark blue, to red, which is missing data, we think. Here's the visual assessment, right? And here was the quantitative assessment. If you line those two suckers up right on top of each other, it's pretty darn close. So we felt confident that we had identified areas, towards the basically the less complete end of this spectrum, where we needed to do more research, and we really needed to get out into the field and probably capture that information. At the end of it, we were able to score each of the hydro basins with a relative ratio score, where the higher the number, the more gaps, and the lower the number, the more we felt through our analysis that the stormwater infrastructure that was on the ground was accurately represented, or completely, holistically represented in the GIS data. And so a couple of problem areas that jumped out from this map were up there in the Cold Springs area, in mostly what is unincorporated Washoe County, and then also in the center of our community in Hydro Basin 87, although I would say most of those gaps were relegated to the Reno jurisdiction, and in fact, most of Sparks was very well mapped because they've done quite a bit of GIS work to track that stuff down over there. So these were kind of some hot spots, but you can see there's areas for improvement all around. So that led us to think, hey, we should probably think about, what's the next phase? What do we do now? So phase 2 really being kind of about editing and completion of the network, filling in those gaps. We delivered this presentation. We've talked with public works staff and other folks, other staff at the jurisdictions. At the time we presented this, there was not a huge appetite to run out there right away and fill those gaps. But people were very appreciative, have the information, and I think we wanted to continue the discussion so we can actually get to phase 2 and move on and get an accurate accounting of where we have this infrastructure. I mean, the long-term goal, which I think is probably a ways off, would be that you could actually model the flow and given a precipitation event or something to that effect throughout our community using the stormwater network as the basis for that. So that, I think we have a lot of work to do to get there, but that's a good goal. In the meantime, and after I shared this data with Aaron Smith, this is kind of a fun connection, Reno coincidence. It's Tyler Smith's brother. They were both my students at one point in geography, which is kind of fun. But Aaron works over at Washoe County. He's an asset management staff over there guy, leads the asset management group for, I think, some public works aspect. And he got the data from us and noticed that there were some gaps that we identified. And he actually went out for Washoe County in those areas and he mapped it and he filled the gaps. And so now if we were to show that hydro basin map, it would look a lot better. And so I think if we're going to move on to phase 2, it'd be important to bring Aaron Smith into the conversation since he has already done this work and filled those gaps. And we could look to how we could go about doing it everywhere. For us at TMRPA, basically it's tough for us to get out there into the field. There's 5 of us. We have a huge workload, and we have a regulatory side, we have an analysis side, and we're trying to get more systematic at TMRPA about how we handle this stuff. And to date, a lot of our projects like this have been sort of one-offs. So we've come up with this idea for something we're calling the PIP, or the Public Infrastructure Investment Plan. And this came out of our work during the regional plan update last year and the years prior. But the idea is really to coordinate with groups such as yourselves and public works staff and anyone that's involved in this infrastructure discussion about what are folks planning for, get a really good handle on future capacity, when things will be built, or planned to be built anyway, where would they serve, how can that then help us make better decisions about land use approvals, because we have a lot of existing entitlements that have gone through the land use entitlement process, the master planning land use process that regional planning is involved in, without a commensurate, understanding of exactly how they would be served and what it would take to serve them. And we're trying to argue that it's important that we have as good of understanding of what it will take to serve an area as possible before we make the approval to serve it. So that's why we're investing our energy in this PIP thing, and we're looking for your support to help us get there and compile all this information. This is not us trying to say, do what TMRPA says. It's really just us trying to compile and centralize the information so that we all can see it and all understand it. And this stormwater work, whatever we choose to move forward as a group together with to continue to flesh this out, at TMRPA, we will work to manage that under our PIP, like an aegis, as a document that will help us to organize all of these efforts we're trying to do. We have some other things that will be roped into that PIP as well that are kind of germane, and that includes our source water protection project. We're working with NDEP and RCI to help prop up a viewer that shows source water protection areas that could be, that information is not readily available to planners right now. So as planners go to do a review of any given development, they could have access to that information. So that's one thing we're working on. And that's sort of also tied together with the grant we got from NDEP to look at non-point source pollution. Similar, it's tied in with the source water. But further, we're also working with One Truckee River, and I'm sure you guys are as well. And I know that Iris, the executive director there, just brought a proposal to the WRWC recently, and that's under review and being refined. But we're actually working together with OTR and Truckee Meadows Tomorrow, which is another entity that I'm involved with, to track metrics about the river and to get them into a data portal that's available now called Nevada Tomorrow. If you guys haven't checked it out, It's popped up there by Truckee Meadows Tomorrow, and it's this free, and Renown actually helped fund it. It's a free data portal that has a ton of data loaded into it, but also allows for data, loading of local data sets. And so the OTR metrics and really some of this stormwater stuff, whenever we want to come up with, could be entered into that portal. It's a really cool progression in the region. So with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. That's a really, really great start. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission?
I have a question. This is Mike Widmer. I'm unfamiliar with your, what is it, Nevada Tomorrow project or portal? And I'll spend some time to look at that, but I was having previous experience in Washoe County. I was really interested in your non-point source pollution grant and what the goals and objectives are, and also the source water protection. So I would ask Chairman Houck if we could maybe schedule a presentation sometime, or whatever means is appropriate, not to waste anybody's time, but or if I could at least be directed to information so I could study that.
Yeah, maybe coordinate with Mr. Wessel to make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, we can figure something out. That'd be great.
I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, it's been a really neat effort, and you know, it's as we try to uncover, you know, these pieces in the community, we find that sometimes we don't have as good a handle on the understanding as we could. It's not pointing fingers or blame. It's just, as we move forward in time, we get more technology, get the ability to do things, and so we're just definitely working to try to bring us up to the latest and greatest when we can.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So Mr. Pawnee, what do we need here? Maybe a motion to accept the report and forward that on to the Western Regional?
Yeah, if you had any specific direction to staff, you could put that in a motion, or it could just be a motion to accept the report.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Before a motion, Mr. Houck, can I ask a question? So Jim, when the comments were made at the WRWC, what was the nature of, what is the board looking for? Just an update? Did they want to, is there energy behind doing additional work, or what was the nature of the comments? I was not at that meeting.
It seemed like there was interest in additional work. So what I was gathering is that Chairman wanted to be brought back up to speed again as far as what work has been done so far, things that have transpired in the meantime, like the additional mapping by Washoe County, and then how we would get into the next phase.
Jim, do you think if Jeremy gave a refresher like he gave the Planning Commission today, do you think that would perhaps elicit a little more direction from WRWC on what they're visioning?
That's what I'm hoping, yeah, is that we would get a little bit more specific direction.
Okay.
And that might be...
I mean, we can accept the report. We already did 2 years ago, I think. So I think what they're looking for is guidance from us. And at this time, all I can really think is to have Jeremy go repeat this and refresh them. You know, put in the piece that Washoe County filled in some gaps with some field work and some GIS work, and maybe the board can give us an idea of what they're looking for. And from there, as their technical advisors, we could perhaps come up with a program.
Yeah, it seemed to me, Jeremy, that at the last work meeting when we talked about it, some of the work that Aaron Smith had done, I think probably caught people off by surprise a little bit. I know it did me. And I know that I spoke to Aaron Smith. Well, one of the things he talked about was one of the gaps that he noticed was that a lot of the infrastructure at the county and Reno line just kind of end, and that there was a bit of work that could be done with the city of Reno. Most of it was the conversion of a lot of the CAD programs into GIS. He said he thought that the data was there. It's just that was a step that needed to be done, and I could easily see that as being a next step or something. And I know that Vaughn has indicated a desire to see some progress on this, and so I'm glad that Aaron came up with that, and might give us some direction to move forward maybe in the future here.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I agree. That's I think exactly what Aaron was talking about and some of the stuff that he did. I would point out that there's a couple of other components we should be looking at in phase 2 as well, which are natural drainage ways. We are getting a good accounting of where natural drainage ways serve as part of our stormwater system, and the interaction with irrigation ditches was also top of mind with Commissioner Hartung. And so looking to see how we can incorporate that in would also be important.
Agreed. Mr. Martini, would you like to make a motion?
I'll take a shot at it, Bill, if that's acceptable to the rest of the commission. I would move that Mr. Smith repeat this presentation to the WRWC. Jeremy, I do think you should make the suggestions you just brought up to the Planning Commission as possible next steps, and see if we get some direction out of the board as to where they want to go.
Second, Zimmerman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda. Agenda item number 7, presentation of the Truckee Meadows Water Authority's draft 2020-2040 Water Resources Plan. Art Steeland, John Enlow, and myself. Cara, you want to kick it off, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will get this started, and then Bill will take over to discuss some of our climate change modeling results. So we are proud to release our draft 2020 to 2040 water resource plan. We were planning on releasing this in March, but with everything that's been going on, we're happy to be releasing it now. So I'll give a brief overview of the kind of what's in the new plan, and it's available online as well if anyone wants to take a look at it. So we have changed the plan quite a bit this year, if you guys are familiar with previous versions of the plan. And so some of the highlights are that this plan is much more user-friendly with a formatting that really engages plan readers. So as you'll go through it, you'll see a lot of photos and at-a-glance sections and sidebars that give people a feel for different topics of importance. So our real goal with this plan was to have it be a tool that would help educate the public. And this is our 4th edition since TUMWA's inception in 2001. So we update the plan every 5 years. And we focused on a scenario-based planning approach in this version with an in-depth analysis of climate change and population and growth impacts on water resources, which we looked at in the previous plan as well. This one we went into a little bit more in-depth analysis of climate change. So looking at our plan update process, our previous plan was approved in 2016, and our board expressed a lot of interest in our future plans having more focus on future planning and less on our history. So the previous plans are a great resource to look at the history of TROA and how TUMWA was created, but this plan is much more forward-looking. And so we started the planning process over 2 years ago now, and we were presented to our board throughout that process to keep them informed of how we were planning on creating the plan in terms of the table of contents and the overviews of our public outreach. And so we really wanted public input in this version. So in December of 2018 and January of 2019, we conducted an electronic survey about water resource topics and received about 2,000 responses from that survey. So I'll talk about that more in a moment, the results from that survey and how it helped guide the plan development. In June 2019, we worked with our consultant, Precision Water Resources Engineering, on the climate change study, and we presented our initial findings to the board, and we have much more detailed findings in this plan. And we also held a policy recommendation workshop with our board in August of 2019. And here we are now in July, doing outreach presentations, including public webinars, and presenting to relevant organizations and agencies. So looking at our public survey, we asked quite a range of questions, and that is actually the full results are available in Appendix A of the plan. But some of the kind of key things that we pulled out from the questions were that the top 3 public concerns were population growth, more severe drought, and wildfire in the upper watershed. And then the top 3 issues were growth and future water demands, future availability of existing resources, the state of our current water resources, and the top 3 topics of importance were planning water resources around projected growth, maintaining drought reserves, and maintaining groundwater supplies. So you can see there's a real theme there around drought and also around growth and future demand. So we did want to focus the plan on those issues in order to help inform the public about how TUMWA plans for growth and drought. So briefly looking at the outline, we have 7 chapters and then just a handful of appendices. And I will provide a brief overview of each of these chapters as we go through the presentation. So chapter 1 is our introduction. So this provides an overview of TUMWA, TUMWA's service area, our plan scope, our plan goals and objectives, more detail on the plan update process, and then major changes and kind of highlights of each version of the water resource plan. And this goals and objectives section is pulled directly from the plan. And of course, the main goal is to ensure that TUMWA has adequate water resources to meet the community's needs over the next 20 years and beyond. And so we did a lot of analysis around that. And another really important goal for us is to maintain community confidence and transparency in TUMWA's planning process, so the community can be informed about how TUMWA plans for the future and can feel confident that we are doing our due diligence to ensure that the region has a sustainable water supply. Just briefly looking at our current water resources though, so chapter 2 provides detail on current surface and groundwater resources, including a brief overview of our TROA operations, looks at conjunctive use of our resources, and also an analysis of our water rights. So just looking at our current population served, we're at about 427,000 people currently, with about 130,000 active service connections, and then an additional 20,000 wholesale customers. And then we also updated this graph, which has been included in previous versions of the plan. This is the Truckee River water rights over time, and we've updated it through 2020. So you can see here there are about 35,000 acre feet of agricultural water rights that could be converted to M&I use over time. So that is also pulled directly from chapter 2. So chapter 3 is really where most of our analysis was completed for this version of the plan. This is our current and future planning environment. So this looks at both at drought and climate change and population growth. So it includes a brief overview of historic droughts, including talking about our 1987 and 1994 planning drought. It analyzes potential climate change impacts on the region's water supply and discusses TUMWA's role in regional growth. And this graph here just shows the mean running annual temperature departure for the state of Nevada. And during our last plan, we got a lot of feedback that people wanted to see more information on how climate change could impact our water supplies moving forward. So we took that into consideration and focused a large portion of this chapter on that issue. So you just saw Jeremy's demand projection for the county. So this is a little less than that because this was just for the TUMWA service area for our actual customers. So you can see that we're currently at about 83,000 acre feet of water use per year. And the dashed line here, we've been seeing a lot of variability in our demand. And so we wanted to include this 3% seasonal weather variability factor. So when we see a hot, dry summer, we get quite a bump in our water use, and we want to account for that. So that gets us close to about 100,000 acre feet by 2040 in terms of our demand. These are just all existing policies regarding regional growth. People are really concerned about how TUMWA addresses growth, and we wanted to reiterate that we enter into the process to ensure appropriate sustainable water rights are dedicated, but we don't determine the amount or type of growth within each of the respective jurisdictions. And so I'm going to pass it over to Bill to discuss our climate change scenarios and our methodology for those scenarios.
Thanks, Kara. So for this latest update on our water resource plan, we simply took the best 8 climate change models for our region and adjusted them for greenhouse gas emissions 80 years into the future at TUMWA's projected demand build-out levels of 140,000 acre feet by 2100. We looked at a moderate carbon emission trajectory, the RCP 4.5, where greenhouse gases level off by mid-century. And we also looked at an extreme carbon emissions trajectory, more of a business as usual forecast, the RCP 8.5 to the year 2100. We did a third scenario as well, which was a historical drought scenario, and where we basically ran 9 different historical hydrologies through the Riverware model at different starting times, different points of initialization, so that all of the major droughts of the last 100 years were put up against our highest demand levels. Please. Thank you. Some of the major assumptions in this, we assumed a 10% conservation anytime fluorescent rates weren't being met during the summer months. We assumed modest groundwater pumping development. We assumed we would continue to expand our recharge capabilities. We would continue to acquire Truckee River water rights in the future. I think there's about 37,000 acre feet of Truckee River rights we feel we can acquire over the next 50 years. We also we'd have no additional imported water from other basins, and we assume the reservoirs are going to be operated the way they currently are under TROA. So the results real quickly, in the historical scenario, there were no shortages at any time. So up to TUMWA's highest build out level of 140,000 acre feet per year to the year 2100, with all of the major droughts in the last 120 years, we never had a shortage. And upstream storage never dropped below acceptable levels. Once again, highlighting the importance of TROA for this region. Under moderate emissions trajectory, the RCP 4.5, our water supply holds up extremely well, as shortages were shown to only occur in about 1.5% of the years. And the first one, not until 63 years out. And that was only in one of the 8 models, 63 years out at a demand level of 120,000 acre feet. That's about 50% more than where we are now. And under the most extreme scenario, does begin to show signs of stress later on, but holds up very well until about the year 2085. And at that point, Lake Tahoe starts going below the rim and stays below the rim for the last 16 years of the model run. Even so, shortages are shown in only 3.9% of the years. And the first one, not until 49, just about 50 years out when we did this analysis. So we didn't show any shortages till 50 years out under the most extreme climate change scenario. Here are basically the results in the bar graph below. What these different colors represent is every year from 2019 to the end of the century. In yellow is the amount of water that TUMWA would be able to divert from the Truckee River in the worst year out of each of the 8 models. So if we saw red any time in this bar graph, that would be representative of a shortage. Basically what this shows is there were no shortages at any time for the next 80 years, basically in a historical scenario, despite the extreme nature of some of these droughts, which were run through at our highest demand levels of 140,000 acre feet a year. Under the moderate emissions scenario, you can see there's some red. The first sign of red is in year 2083. But that's only in one of the 8 models, and that is 63 years out. You do start to see a little bit more red when we get right up to the year 2096, 97, 98. There are some signs of stress, but still, all in all, only about 1.5% of all model runs showed that there would be any shortages. But what is interesting here, you can notice is more of the variability in terms of the yellow part of the bar graphs compared to historical. You can see there's, from year to year, there's much more variability in terms of how much water TUM was actually able to be divert in any given year, any of those worst years. And in the results for the RCP 8.5, the highest emission scenario, you can see there's quite a bit more red, but really we don't really see red until about the year 2084, 85. We do see some at the year 2068, but that was only in one of the model runs, and that is about 50 years out from now. Again, this is the highest emissions scenario, and it's considered to be very extreme. And some of actually the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is beginning to back away from this high emission scenario, as it was based on estimated construction of coal-fired power plants, which basically haven't been being built in recent years. Really what you want to notice here is about year 2085, we start seeing some real stress and some shortages where Lake Tahoe goes below the natural rim and doesn't come back. And you can see that on the upper graph, which is the mean Lake Tahoe surface elevation for every one of those years. You can see in 2085, 2083, it goes below the rim and just doesn't come back. And Tahoe goes just about 7 feet below the rim by the end of the run. So very, very extreme. But you again, comparing this to the historical, you can see the extreme variability from year to year in terms of how much water TUM was actually able to divert to meet customer demand in any given year. So more variability. There are shortages. There's definitely more stress in the system, but still, all in all, we're talking about under the worst case emissions scenario, emission trajectories out there run through the Riverware model. Our system holds up at least 50 years into the future under very, very conservative assumptions for the model. I think most of you know, but in September, TUMO was awarded a grant by the Bureau of Reclamation, a $1.8 million matching funds grant, actually. It's actually a multiple agency grant where we worked with the Water Master, the state of California, and TURFMA, but TUMO is the lead agency, to study the reoperation of federally owned reservoirs in the Truckee system for wintertime flood control operations. These reservoirs are currently regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and a 1985, what's called a water control manual, which basically was written, developed based on hydrologies from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. So what we had proposed and why we were awarded the grant is we're hoping at the end of the day to get approval from the Army Corps of Engineers to begin adaptively managing these reservoirs during the winter months to maintain not only their effectiveness for flood control, but we're looking to significantly improve our ability to manage for water supply operations under a continually changing climate during normal and drought years. We're looking for more flexibility to help us manage through what's called forecast informed reservoir operations, upstream storage, which, in the future under climate change, we're all signs are pointing towards an earlier and earlier springtime runoff. So the memorandum of agreement was recently signed, and we are just getting ready the next week or two to kick off work on that. So.
Great. Thanks, Bill. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the last few chapters, and then we'll take any questions or comments. So our chapter 4 is our conservation strategies chapter. This is a little different than our previous plan in that our entire conservation plan used to be wrapped up in the water resource plan. Now we have a separate drought contingency plan that actually covers all of our conservation strategies. So this chapter gives an overview of our demand management practices and also our enhanced practices we use in order to respond to drought. So you can see the graph here that shows that over time, our residential per capita demand has continued to decrease or stabilize. And that has been largely a result of our demand management practices and also our metering of almost all of our customers at this point in time. We have some updated graphics that show our enhanced demand management practices and our strategies to respond to our 4 severity levels of drought, and in order to minimize our use of drought reserves during those drought situation years, so we can carry them over to the next year when needed. So chapter 5 also has quite a bit of analysis included. It includes benefit and challenge tables for a range of future water resources. It looks at our construction of our 4 million gallon per day Mount Rose water treatment plant, which will be completed late this year, hopefully. And it also looks at the ability to potentially use additional creek resources. Talks about water banking investigations that we're currently working on, looks at new groundwater projects and possible treatment systems for existing groundwater areas that have been impacted by degraded water quality. Also talks about Marlette Lake and our discussions with the state of Nevada and Carson City and about how we could all mutually benefit from reoperating that lake a bit. And then also looks at our advanced purified water pilot studies that we've all been working on with One Water Nevada. Chapter 6 is new to this plan. It looks at protecting the watershed and environment. So it looks at TOMWA's commitment to protecting water quality and being a steward of the watershed and environment. So TOMWA obviously recognizes the importance of a healthy Truckee River. So we have the Truckee River Fund. The chapter talks about some of the key and really interesting projects that the Truckee River Fund has helped support over the years. It also talks about our involvement in One Truckee River. And it talks about our involvement also with the integrated source water protection plan that Jeremy mentioned in his presentation, and also talks about how our hydroelectric plants on the river help decrease our carbon emissions. So this is just some of the key takeaways that we want the public to recognize when they're looking through this plan. And really the biggest one is that TOMWA has sufficient water rights to address the region's growing water demand over the next 20 years and beyond. And obviously we took that even further in this plan, in that this is a 20-year plan, but we used the current climate change science to actually stress test our water system all the way out until 2098. And as Bill showed, those results really show that TOMWA has a resilient, reliable water supply, even under the worst case scenarios for at least the next 50 years. As I'm sure all of you are aware, modeling is really difficult that far into the future. So we will be updating this plan in 5 years and looking at the most current climate science at that point in time and seeing how those projections may have changed. And we'll also always be looking to adaptively manage our resources to ensure that our water supply is sustainable. And we really want the community to recognize that through planning and modeling, we are doing our due diligence to ensure there's a sustainable water supply for the community. So until August 7th, we are accepting public input at tomwa.com/WRP2020. The draft plan is available there, along with a similar PowerPoint to the one that was presented to you all today, and a question and comment form that can you can just put your questions or comments in right there, and we will address them. So with that, we would all be happy to take any questions or comments at this time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Cara. Great job. Do we have any comments or questions? Okay, well, thanks a lot, Cara. Great job. Moving on to the next agenda item. That would be agenda item number 8. Yes?
That's correct.
Yep. Agenda item number 8, review, discussion, and possible recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission for approval of a scope of work and funding not to exceed $150,000 from the Regional Water Management Fund for consulting, engineering assistance concerning the completion of the Regional Effluent Management Planning Guidance Document Project. Mr. Smitherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the fall of 2018, the Regional Effluent Management Team, which I sit on, has been working with an associate research professor, Dr. Jeff Curtis, through an agreement with UNR's Nevada Water Innovation Institute on the development of this Regional Effluent Management Guidance document. It's a 3-year project. We're 2 years in, so there's about a year left on the contractor, the expected time frame for the development of the document. To date, a significant amount of information has been compiled. It's all still in draft form, although a couple of you have seen it with some internal meetings. And it covers each one of the 5 water reclamation facilities in the region, treatment capacity, expansion plans, constraints, near, intermediate, and long-term effluent management options, which is really the focus of the project. For each of the facilities, and then some options for shared effluent management among the entities and among the facilities, such as interties between water reclamation facilities and effluent uses in and outside our immediate vicinity, so outside our planning area. And those would include some of the advanced water treatment or category A+ effluent options. The team has very recently decided that we need additional help to evaluate the engineering aspects of the numerous options, opportunities, and constraints to complement Dr. Curtis's skill set and bring the project to completion on schedule, so within about a year from now. The team proposes to bring Roy Johnson of Brown and Caldwell on board to assist from an engineering perspective. If some of you remember back, Roy Johnson helped to lead the regional effluent management team to facilitate those meetings and to develop the framework or the outline that we're using to construct this effluent management planning guidance document. Since Brown and Caldwell's proposed help will decrease the burden on UNR, we propose to divert about $80,000 from this fiscal year's UNR contract and reduce the professor's a commitment to about a half time and augment that project augment that with project contingency funds, in approximately amount of $70,000 to pay for Brown and Caldwell's work. Now, at this point in time, this is recent enough, and developing a full-blown proposal from Brown and Caldwell wasn't possible before posting time for this meeting, and so we don't have a full-blown proposal. What I have is a very sketchy outline on tasks remaining that I attached to your staff report, and also the budget is just a guess at this point. We just wanted to estimate on the high side, so we don't know what the proposal is going to cost us, but we'll limit it to $150,000, and we don't know exactly what Brown and Caldwell's approach and needs are going to be. So, but at this point, in the interest of time, what I wanted to do was at least bring this to you before I signed off the middle of this month, and see if you would trust us to develop the scope and negotiate a successful contract with Brown and Caldwell based on your recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission. I would completely understand if things are not well enough developed for you to make a firm recommendation at this point too, but I wanted to at least pose it to you and see what you think. So with that, sir, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and for your comments and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smitherman. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission?
This is John Enlow. I have some comments. As a member on the Regional Effluent Management Team, I strongly believe that giving Jim and or Chris the flexibility to finalize a scope of work, I think what we've done in the past, the Regional Effluent Management Team, which really represents many of us, Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, Tumwater, others, I think we can work collectively to come up with an appropriate scope of work and put that scope forward to the Western Regional Water Commission in a timely manner so that we can continue to move forward. The work that the team is doing is important, it's timely, it's essential, And I think authorizing Chris to finalize the scope of work based on input from the regional effluent management team is appropriate.
Is that a motion?
I'd be happy, maybe let others if they have any other questions or comments, but I'd be happy to make a motion if there's no further discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Mike Widmer.
Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Program Manager's Report. Mr. Smitherman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to scroll down on my screen here to find the Program Manager Report. There we go. So there's nothing really new or earth-shaking that I would draw your attention to. The first page attachment shows the status of the projects that we have entered into the accounting system, so you can look at how much is funded for each one of the projects, what the percent completion is based on payment of invoices. And then the second page is what you usually see in our financial status report. This is through period 12, so that would be the full fiscal year 1920. And you can see that we hit our revenue projections almost on the nose. It looks like we were 1% off and about $13,000 under the projected revenue. So pretty close considering everything that's happened this year. And then also down to the expenditures, we're well under budget as far as our proposed expenditures. It looks like we have committed about $1.9 million for the year, and we will certainly ending the fiscal year in the black and in good shape for carrying over funds into next fiscal year. So with that, I would turn back to you, Mr. Chairman, for comments or questions.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Any comments, questions from the commission? All right, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 10. Discussion regarding location and possible agenda items for the August 2020 Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission meeting and other future meetings and possible direction to staff. Mr. Smitherman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It looks like our location for our next meeting is probably going to be the same as this meeting. I guess it'll depend on what the governor does as far as extending phase 2 of the recovery and what future directives might be. But I know at this point that he's extended the public meetings to be held electronically through the end of this month. So I think probably be expecting similar conditions for August 1. I think it'd be wise to plan for that at least. Agenda items, probably, Chris, you can help me out with this one, but it's probably going to be time to start talking about recommendations for updating the regional water plan by our next meeting.
Well, what I was hoping that we could do is possibly cancel our next meeting because I am planning to be out of town on that date. I do have a series of things coming up that I think will be kind of lined up for September. We'll be looking at some review of some chapters that we've received quite a bit of input on, especially from Tumwa. So that'd be chapter 2, water resources, maybe the public purveyors chapter and the conservation chapter. So those would be things that we might be able to take a look at that time. Also, I did have a meeting today, and it looks like the Integrated Source Water Protection Program consultants, RCI and NDP, are looking to make a presentation to the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. I suggested maybe September might be a good time for that. And I guess at that time, we can also take and I don't know what the status of TMRPA Stormwater GIS, whether they get any kind of proposal to us by that time or not. We could always take a look at that. those would be the things that I'm thinking right off the bat would be. Is that what you're thinking, Jim? Did you have any other items that came to mind?
No, nothing additional. I think you covered that thoroughly, Chris. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Wessel, Mr. Smitherman. Any other comments? Okay, with that, I guess we're looking for a motion to cancel the August meeting and reconvene in September.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
So moved, Enlow.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Mr. Enlow, a second by Mr. Martini. Any further discussion? Favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action on the retirement of Jim Smitherman and recognition of service. So for me at this time, resolution number 20-01, recognizing Jim Smitherman for his contribution to the regional water management planning in Washoe County. Whereas Jim Smitherman has served as the Water Resources Program Manager in support of regional water management for the communities in Washoe County since April 2001. And whereas Jim served as the Water Resources Program Manager for Washoe County Regional Water Planning Commission from April 2001 to 2008, prior to the creation of the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. And whereas Jim served as the Water Resources Program Manager for the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission and the Western Regional Water Commission from April 2008 to the date of his retirement this month. And whereas Jim faithfully carried out the legislative mandates of the Western Regional Water Commission Act through his guidance on both commissions with diligence and integrity. And whereas Jim's extensive knowledge of water utility service and infrastructure planning in the Truckee Meadows has been invaluable to both commissions and this community. And whereas Jim has been a champion of fiscal responsibility and prudent budgeting and spending of the financial resources of the Regional Water Management Fund. And whereas Jim's stalwartness displayed to the commission, his coworkers, and the community during times of great personal distress is hereby recognized and acclaimed. And whereas Jim has demonstrated the highest standards of professional conduct, carrying out duties with integrity and dedication, benefiting the commission, the stakeholders in the regional water resource planning, the citizens of the Truckee Meadows, and the members of the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. And whereas the staff and members of Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission have enjoyed working with Jim due to his pleasant temperament, his broad experience in water issues, his fair-minded leadership, and his ability to move an issue forward. And whereas recognition for a job well done and very much deserved by Jim Smitherman. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission, Smitherman be recognized for his contribution to the commission's efforts, and that he will be greatly missed by the members, staff, and all who worked with him. And be it further resolved that Jim accept this resolution in appreciation of his contribution to better water management in the Truckee Meadows, and as a reminder of the respect that Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission has for him. Adopted this first day of July, 2020. Jim, thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you. Did you guys fit that all on one page, Chris? That was.
It was actually.
Hey, 6-point, font.
6-point font, yeah. I am truly humbled by your expression of appreciation. The knowledge that I have is largely a product of the people who are sitting around, this meeting collectively today, and those who preceded you on the Water Planning Commission. And I only hope that what I've gained in knowledge, I've reflected back in what I've been able to offer the region as far as planning and the good work of this commission and the Western Regional Water Commission. So thank you so much. I happily accept. And I truly hope that we don't become strangers. And I hope to at least to visit you back in a couple of future meetings as the next year or so go by and help Chris update the regional water plan. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. As much as we believe in Chris, we are going to miss you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just have to say that, you know, my entrance into this position was really a product of the fact that I happened to see Jim's name on the bottom of a job announcement. It's the only reason I really applied for it. And because I had worked with Jim before, and I knew that he had the right temperament and everything else. And so everything that was in that resolution was exactly the way I thought of it when I joined forces with you when we first started. And I don't, you know, honestly, I don't think you made many mistakes since we started, but probably the first one I can think of was the day I started and you said, you know, Chris, I really want you to give me your opinion on things when you know, or we go forward. And I think I made you regret that the first 6 months, but since that point, you know, really, I appreciate the fact that you were there and were a great mentor to me as I move forward. This is probably a foreign position for me, maybe as it was for you when you started. And I think you did a great job and set a great example and really moved the commission forward well. So I'd say I'd miss you, but you're not going away, so I can't really miss you. So since those of you don't know that Jim will be back on temp through our temporary services to help with the plan and also help with the regional effluent management team, which frankly, I don't know how they managed it without him at this point. And so anyway, I'm really glad that you'll be around, and but I will miss you not taking the blame for everything. I can tell you that. So, which is never, you know. But anyway, thanks for everything.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Anybody else?
Hey, Jim, on behalf of the city of Sparks, I want to thank you for everything. I admire your ability to pick up what was a legislative construct and turn it into what it became today. You have served our region incredibly well, and it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to work with you, and I wish you the best. And I'm a little sad to hear you're coming back on a contract. So that's not what retirement looks like, Jim.
Hey,
It'll be part-time, I swear. Thank you, John.
Anybody else? Mr. Flensburg.
Yeah, Jim, been able to work with you for several years here on the Nevada Water Planning Commission, and likewise, based on the city of Reno, just want to thank you for your service. Want to thank you for your diligence and in following through the regional water management plan updates. It's been a great pleasure working with you, and I wish you all the best, and we'll continue looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, John. Looking forward to it too.
Irvin.
Yeah, and on behalf of the Pemberley Paiute Tribe, thank you, Jim. I came on in 2015, and I thought it was going to be a little bit more daunting than it was. And you know, after I got to meet you and sit down and talk with you and Chris and Jennifer, you always, you know, welcome, you know, me to come in and talk with you over anything on the agenda, anything about, you know, what your program's doing. And it made me feel comfortable in knowing that, you know, you had an open door. And I think at least on behalf of the tribe, you know, our concerns down here at the bottom of the river system, you know, we're always looking upstream at everything and anything that is going on. And just appreciate, you know, your service and what you've done on behalf of your agency there, and wish you the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin.
John.
One quick comment. I just want to reiterate what everybody said, but Jim, really appreciate working with you, and you're a good man, and you'll be missed.
Agreed.
Thank you, John.
Hey, Jim and Bill, this is Danielle. Ditto from me, and on behalf of the Flood Project, you know, thanks for everything you've done. I've really enjoyed working with you over the years, and certainly will enjoy continuing to work with Chris and Jennifer. But best of luck to you, and take some time to relax. I don't know what this contract is all about, but I hope you go have some fun and travel and ride your bike and do all of those things. So thanks again for everything.
Thank you, Danielle. Those things are on the agenda. I promise.
Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, agenda item number 12, commissioner comments. Any comments? Okay, agenda item 13, staff comments.
Oh, you've heard enough from me. Chris, are you shaking your head no more?
Yeah, I think I've said enough.
Okay, thank you. No additional comments.
Okay, moving on. Agenda item 14, public comments with a 3-minute time limit per person. I don't.
We have none.
Okay, good enough. Agenda item 15, adjournment. With that, I will declare this meeting adjourned. See you all next month in August.
See y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you,
Thanks,
Jim.
everybody.